Chaitanya Charitamrita. Is this on? Yep. Let's see. And we're reading from the Adi Lila, chapter 3. And we're starting at text 19. But we're actually going to, the reading ended yesterday, text 18, so we'll be starting at text 19. But we're going to chant this one together. This is a favorite verse of Archita Prabhu's, and a very nice verse describing Lord Chaitanya. So we'll do that. Suvarna Varna He Mango. Suvarna Varna He Mango. Varangas Chandanagari. Varangas Chandanangadi. Sanyasa Krichama Santo. Sanyasa Krichama Santo. Nishta Shanti Parayanaha. Nishta Shanti Parayanaha. Suvarna Varna He Mango. Varangas Chandanangadi. Sanyasa Krichchamahas Shanto. Nishta Shanti Parayanaha. Suvarna Varna He Mango. Vaishnavis. Suvarna of gold. Varnaha, having the color. Hema Angaha, whose body was like molten gold. Varna Anga, having a most beautiful body. Chandana Angadi, whose body was smeared with sandalwood. Sannyasakrit, practicing the renounced order of life. Samaha, equipoised. Shanta, peaceful. Nishta, devotion. Shanti, end of peace. Parayana, the highest resort. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In his early pastimes, he appears as a householder with a golden complexion. His limbs are beautiful, and his body, smeared with the pulp of sandalwood, seems like molten gold. In his later pastimes, he accepts the sannyas order, and he's equipoised and peaceful. He is the highest abode of peace and devotion, for he silences the impersonalist non-devotees. Purport. This is a verse from the Mahabharata, Gana Dharma Vishnu Sahasranam Stotra. In his commentary on the Vishnu Sahasranam, called the Namarta Shuddha, Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan, commenting upon this verse, asserts that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the evidence of the Upanishads. He explains that Suvarna Varnaha means a golden complexion. He also quotes the Vedic injunction, Yada pasya pashyati rukma varnam kartaram isham purusham brahma yonim. That's from the Mukunda Upanishad 3.1.3. Rukma varnam kartaram isham refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as having a complexion the color of molten gold. Purusham means the Supreme Lord, and Brahma yonim indicates that he is also the Supreme Brahman. This evidence too proves that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Another meaning of the descriptions of the Lord as having a golden hue is that Lord Chaitanya's personality is as fascinating as gold is attractive. Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan has explained that the word varanga means exquisitely beautiful. Lord Chaitanya accepted sannyas, leaving aside his householder life, to preach his mission. He has equanimity in different senses. Hang on one second. Okay. First, he describes the confidential truth of the personality of Godhead, and second, he satisfies everyone by knowledge and attachment to Krishna. He is peaceful because he renounces all topics not related to the service of Krishna. Srila Baladev Vijayabhusan has explained that the word nishtha indicates his being rigidly fixed in chanting the holy name of Sri Krishna. Lord Chaitanya subdued all disturbing opponents of devotional service, especially the monists, who are actually averse to the personal feature of the Supreme Lord. Om Ganathamidam Dasha Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshunam Militamyena Tasmai Shri Gudave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamyena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamayam Dadapti Swakarantikam. So as I mentioned, yesterday we left off verse 18. So I'm going to be going back to 19, but I'm going to just say a little something about this before I do. So there's one sentence here that caught my attention. Prabhupada says, Lord Chaitanya's personality is as fascinating as gold is attractive. So, yeah, there's many different pastimes which kind of illustrated this point, that Lord Chaitanya, people were really attracted by him. You know, just, there's an expression in English, to know you is to like you, something like that, or to know you is to love. Just to see Lord Chaitanya, people would get attracted. The most outstanding example that comes to my mind is this one. It's described in the Madhya Lila, where Lord Chaitanya he was traveling through a particular region of India, and his devotees were worried because that region was being terrorized by a Muslim governor who was a drunkard. They referred to him as Madhyapi, which means a drunkard, you know. So, very difficult personality. He was persecuting Brahmins, cows. He was real bad news. And the devotees were worried that he was going to make problems, you know. So Lord Chaitanya was, you know, they had him in a camp, which was across a river from where this fellow was operating. And wherever Lord Chaitanya went, he would attract large crowds of people, not just his, you know, devotees, of course his devotees, but then other people would just they realized, hey, something special is going on here. So that's what happened. They were trying to keep a low profile. His confidential associates were trying to keep a low profile, so Lord Chaitanya could kind of slip through. But all these people just kind of like come, because they were so attracted by Lord Chaitanya, they could understand something special about this guy, So that was going on, and there was kirtan, and it was like big, uproarious kirtans, and so the Muslim governor sent a spy over to check out what was going on. And the spy, what happened was when he got there and he started hearing the kirtan and everything like that, he became infected, right, by ecstatic love for God. And when he went back there, he was like a transformed person. And so the governor was going, what's so he asked his minister. His minister was also kind of sympathetic, but he was really keeping it under wrappers. He was keeping it confidential, So when he asked his minister, who is this person? He says, no, it's just because I said the minister was sympathetic. He liked Lord Chaitanya and the devotees. So he said, it's just some sannyasi, some mendicant, he has a few sentimental people following him. He's no importance, no significance. I wouldn't even pay any attention to him. So the governor goes, no, right? The governor says, no, I don't think that's the case. Nobody could attract that many people and have such a profound influence upon him if he's just some ordinary person. He's somebody special. And he kind of figured out he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he wanted to see him. Anyway, to make a long story short, he eventually did get a darshan. He did actually get the opportunity to see him. And when he saw him, same thing happens. What happened to the spy and the minister, and he became transformed. He became transformed into like a devotee, and not just a regular old devotee, but like he got to experience ecstatic love for God. His entire personality, his entire character and personality changed, and he offered service to Lord Chaitanya, and he actually assisted Lord Chaitanya in getting from where he was to where he had to be. There was another area where they had to pass through on boats that had a lot of pirates. There were pirates back in those days, in that part of the river. So this formerly drunken governor constructed 7 or 8 boats, right? Like to escort Lord Chaitanya from where he was safely to where he wanted to go. And if the pirates would come, they had the boats there to defend him like that. So he did that service. So that was one example. And then he was another time in the Chaitanya Charitamrita was describing how he was traveling and he went to the house of the Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's brother-in-law. I'm pretty sure either his brother or his brother-in-law, Vijayavachaspati. And when he got to that house, word got out that Lord Chaitanya is at that place. So people were like, they were going through jungle. It's just described. They were beating paths. They were creating paths to get there, and they were crossing the river. Even if they didn't know how to swim. People were just mad to get to where Lord Chaitanya was, to get his association. Same thing happened in Banaras at the temple of Bindu Madhava. Lord Chaitanya went. There's a picture of that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where it kind of shows him like that, and hundreds and thousands of people would just all of a sudden congregate, on the scene there because they were just. As it says here, his personality was as fascinating as gold is attractive. He looked beautiful. He moved beautifully, and just from his appearance, the way he moved, the way just the way he chanted, whatever he said, people were just like, "Wow, this is." They used to dig when Lord Chaitanya was walking along a path. People would go to where he had stepped, and they'd dig up the dirt. They wanted to have the earth, the dirt, from where Lord Chaitanya his feet had touched the ground. That was the kind of influence he had on people in general. It was like something really, really extraordinary. So that's on this point here about how his personality was as fascinating as gold is attractive. So going back to text 19 now. So this is Lord Chaitanya speaking. He says, this is Krishna speaking. He's in quotation marks. I shall personally inaugurate the religion of the age, Nam Sankirtan, the congregational chanting of the holy name. I shall make the world dance in ecstasy, realizing the 4 mellows of loving devotional service. Okay, sorry I didn't chant the Sanskrit for that, but we'll go back. So, this is Krishna speaking, and he's saying what he's intending to do, and the very end of that translation caught my attention, realizing the four mellows of loving devotional service. So that doesn't necessarily ordinarily happen. In other words, this, and what I'm saying now was already mentioned by Dear Lalita yesterday. Lord Chaitanya was somebody, it was not just your run-of-the-mill avatar. He was a very special avatar. And Dear Lalita read yesterday, and actually it's very significant that what I'm about to read to you, what Dear Lalita Prabhu read yesterday, and what I'm about to read to you, is not just mentioned here in the third chapter, but it's mentioned twice. It is Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami quotes this verse twice in 3 chapters, in the first 3 chapters of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and here it is. He says, this is a quoting Rupa Goswami. This appeared in a play that Rupa Goswami wrote called Vidagdha Madhava. It was a drama that he wrote. Okay, and this was a verse that appeared in that drama. And it says, "May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendently situated in the innermost core of your heart." He's always offering a blessing, a benediction. "Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has descended in this age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow," and here it comes, "to bestow what no incarnation has ever offered before, the most elevated mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love." So that verse is quoted here. It's quoted in the very beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's one of several verses like it's an invocation. So that's the particular significance of Lord Chaitanya, that by his causeless mercy, he's doing what no incarnation has ever offered before. He's offering the most elevated mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. See? So he's not just like a Yuga avatar that's just coming to, introduce. No, he's something. This is special. This is special. And we're going to elaborate upon that as we continue reading here. So, getting back to our verses. Where are we now? I'll get back there. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Number 20 now. Apani karima bhakta bhava angikade, apani achari bhakti sikaimu sabade. Translation. I shall accept the role of a devotee, and I shall teach devotional service by practicing it myself. This is still Krishna speaking, okay? He's revealing his mind here. Purport. When one associates with a pure devotee, he becomes so elevated that he does not aspire even for sharshti, sarupya, samipya, or salokya. Those are the 4 different types of liberation, because he feels that such liberation is a kind of sense gratification. Pure devotees do not ask anything from the Lord for their personal benefit. Even if offered personal benefits, pure devotees do not accept them, because their only desire is to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead by transcendental loving service. No one but the Lord himself can teach the highest form of devotional service. Therefore, when the Lord took the place of the incarnation of Kali Yuga to spread the glories of chanting Hare Krishna, the system of worship recommended in this age, he also distributed the process of devotional service performed on the platform of transcendental spontaneous love. To teach the highest principles of spiritual life, the Lord himself, Krishna, appeared as a devotee in the form of Lord Chaitanya. So the sentence here that, in this particular purport that caught my attention was this one. Therefore, when the Lord took the place of the incarnation of Kali Yuga to spread the glories of the chanting of Hare Krishna, which is the system of worship recommended in this age, he also distributed the process of devotional service performed on the platform of transcendental spontaneous love. So, he took the place of the incarnation of Kali Yuga. So who is supposed to be the incarnation in the Kali Yuga? Somebody might think, well, Kalki? No. Kalki is not the Yuga avatar. Kalki is a Leela avatar. And I've got some evidence for that from a secondary source, but let me give it to you. This is from ISKCON Desire Tree. They're pretty reliable. and explains here, there's a section here where it describes about the 6 categories of avatars. So the first being the Purusha avatars. Then it talks about Leela avatars. So then it gives you a big long list of Leela avatars mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So they did the research. I'm just going on their research. And right at the very end of the list, Kalki. So Kalki is a Leela avatar. He's not the Yuga avatar. And who those other Yuga avatars are? Because in a day of Brahma, how many Yuga avatars would there be? How many Yugas are there in the day of Brahma? 1,000, right? Actually, there's 1,000 cycles of the 4 yugas. So it's 1,000 times 4, because if there's an avatar in every yuga, that means there's an avatar in the Satya Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, the Treta Yuga, and the Kali Yuga. So it's 1,000 times 4. So, okay, so help me out here. Let's name a few other yuga avatars. Who are some yuga avatars from previous yugas? Anybody know? I don't either. Huh? Sitaram? I don't know if he's a Yuga avatar or a Leela avatar. I think Ram is a Leela avatar, right? I could look at that list again. But the point is that Lord Chaitanya is special. He's not... Who? Hamsa? Was a Satya Yuga avatar. Yeah. So, we could do some research and find out. But Lord Chaitanya is not just another Yuga avatar. He's very special because, once again, he's not just... As it points out here, the glories, he came to spread the glories of chanting Hare Krishna. That's the system of worship recommended in this age. So it's not like, my impression that I get from reading that is that the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, that is as it says here, the system of worship recommended in this age for Kali Yuga, all the Kali Yugas. You have the system of worship recommended is this congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. But Lord Chaitanya did something in addition to just inaugurating that. He presented the process of devotional service performed on the platform of transcendental spontaneous love. Just, referring back to what I just read, that verse by Rupa Goswami. So that's special. That's special. And that was what Lord Chaitanya did. So we're reading on here now. He says, unless one practices devotional service himself, he cannot teach it to others. This conclusion is indeed confirmed throughout the Gita and the Bhagavatam. Then there's a few quotes here from different verses from the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium. If I did not show the proper principles of religion, all these worlds would fall into ruin, and I would be the cause of unwanted population and would spoil all these living beings. This is Krishna speaking from the Bhagavad Gita. Whatever actions a great man performs, common people follow, and whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Okay, so that's the end of those verses that have been quoted from the Bhagavad Gita. Now it goes on to say, my plenary portions can establish the principles of religion for each age. Okay? But, that's my but. There's no but here. It says, no one but me, however, can bestow the kind of loving service performed by the residents of Vraj. So that's what's special. That's what's special here. See, plenary portions can establish the principles of religion for each age, but what happened just recently with the advent of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna adventing as Lord Chaitanya, is something more than just establishing the principles of religion for the age, but giving people the opportunity to have the kind of loving service performed by the residents of Vraj. That's what's being stated. However, no one but Krishna, or Lord Chaitanya, can bestow the kind of loving service performed by the residents of Vraj. That's the opportunity. That's the opportunity that's being offered here. Goes on. There may be many all-auspicious incarnations of the personality of Godhead, but who other than Lord Krishna can bestow love of Godhead upon the surrendered souls? That's a quote from a Laghu Bhagavatamrita by Bilva Mangala Thakur. Therefore, in the company of my devotees, I shall appear on earth and perform various colorful pastimes. Thinking thus, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself, descended at Nadia early in the age of Kali. Thus, the lion-like Lord Chaitanya has appeared in Navadvip. He has the shoulders of a lion, the powers of a lion, the loud voice of a lion. May that lion be seated in the core of the heart of every living being. Thus, with his resounding roar, may he drive away one's elephantine vices. So that's interesting, that it's being mentioned here that people have elephantine vices, means big vices, big vices. And that's significant because, and that relates to the overall understanding here, that in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, first chapter, text 10, there's that verse, prayena ayusap sabya kalena smen yuge janaha manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya hupadiritaha. And it explains that people in this age, they're lazy, they're misguided, they're short-lived, they're always disturbed, they're unfortunate, maybe a couple more, okay? That's people in this age in general. So elephantine vices, they're really losers. The people, the human beings in the Kali Yuga are losers. But Lord Chaitanya, he's so powerful, it's such a powerful counteracting type of a force that he drives away one's elephantine vices. And that's, once again, very significant. I'm going to say something more about that in a couple seconds here. In his early pastimes, he is known as Vishvambar because he floods the world with the nectar of devotion and thus saves the living beings. The verbal root, dubrin, which is the root of the word Vishvambara, indicates nourishing and maintaining. He, Lord Chaitanya, nourishes and maintains the three worlds by distributing love of God. In his later pastimes, he is known as Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. He blesses the whole world by teaching about the name and fame of Lord Sri Krishna. And in the purport to this, Prabhupada talks something about how Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. And I'm going to read a section from the purport here, which explains why Lord Chaitanya took sannyas and why he took sannyas in the Shankara Sampradaya. Okay? So Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, he decided to accept the renounced order sannyas since the acceptance of sannyas was also designed to attract public attention. Lord Chaitanya, not wishing to disturb the social convention, took the renounced order of life from a sannyasi in the disciplic succession of Sankaracharya, although sannyas was also sanctioned in the Vaishnava Sampradaya. Actually, there's one sentence before it says, Lord Chaitanya could have performed his missionary activities as a householder, but he found householder life as an obstruction to his mission. So I think the way to understand that is this. Imagine a hypothetical situation that you discovered a cure for cancer. You really did. You had your little chemistry set in your basement of your house and you were messing around and you discovered a cure for cancer and you tested it on some people who were willing and it works. You really discovered it. Now you wanted to, as a good person, you wanted to get that out there, right? Because, hey, cancer is a horrible disease. So many people get cancer and they die from it or they suffer. You really wanted to share it with everybody, this discovery. So what would you do? But you're aware of the fact that, well, if I just go out there, I'm just a kid. Didn't even finish like college or anything like that, and I just discovered this in my basement with my chemistry set. If I just go out there and start trying to tell everybody, hey, I've got the cure for cancer, who's going to listen to me? The way the world is you need credentials, So, you need to be somebody for people to listen to you. So, you'd have to go to college, you'd have to graduate medical school, and then they might start listening to you. It's just, as I said, this is an analogy, hypothetical off the top of my head. So Lord Chaitanya's situation is something like that, He's got something really valuable that he wants to share with everybody, He knows it, he's experiencing it. And he doesn't want, he knows that if he stayed in the household ashram, that wouldn't work. He already experienced that. When he had that Chatuspati, the little school, and one day he was chanting the names of the gopis, and in ecstasy, and one student came and said, why are you chanting the names of the gopis? Why don't you, what is this, sentimental nonsense? Why don't you chant the name of Krishna? The student tried to, correct him like that. And Lord Chaitanya, he got really upset. He got really annoyed. He lost his temper, actually, with the guy. And he grabbed the stick and, chased him away like that. So the student went back and told all the friends what happened. And they decided that, if he tries something like that again, if he threatens us with physical, we're going to we'll respond, you know. So Lord Chaitanya, he could understand the whole situation, what was going on, and said, no, it's not going to work, you know. These guys, because I'm a grihasta, they think I'm just like on the same level. I mean, I'm the teacher, but they're not showing me any special respect. So he took sannyas. He took sannyas so that people would, because especially back in those days, you know, 500, sannyasi was still like a very elevated, prestigious kind of, people had special respect for sannyas. So Lord Chaitanya, that was a big part of the reason why he took sannyas, so that people would show that respect and get the benefit of showing, like a Gyata Sukriti. Even though they weren't respecting him, knowing he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were just respecting him because he was a sannyasi, they'd benefit from that. So that's part of the reason why he took sannyas. And here we just heard that the reason he took it in the Sankara Sampradaya is because they were more well known for that. You know, the Vaishnava sannyasi was, as Prabhupada says here, it was sanctioned. You know, he could have taken a Vaishnava, but it was like more impressive. You know, oh, okay, he's a Sankara Sampradaya sannyasi. That's big time, you know. So he did that as like a means to an end, you know, to help, to make it just easier for people to accept who he was and his authority like that. So that's the understanding there. And but why did he keep his? He didn't take a sannyas name, you know, because he took sannyas from a Sankara Sampradaya. So they have these 10 names that they accept, and Lord Chaitanya kept the name Chaitanya, which is a name for a brahmachari. And Bhakti Siddhanta, Prabhupada says here at the end of the purport, he says, the great authorities in the disciplic session had not offered to explain why Lord Chaitanya refused the name of Bharti after he took sannyas from a Bharti, Keshava Bharti, until Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj volunteered the explanation that because a sannyasi in the Sankara Sampradaya thinks that he has become the Supreme Lord, Lord Chaitanya, wanting to avoid such a misconception, kept the name Sri Krishna Chaitanya, placing himself as an eternal servitor. A brahmachari is supposed to serve the spiritual master. Therefore, he did not negate that relationship of servitude to his spiritual master. Accepting such a position is favorable for the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master. So, you know, he didn't think that upon taking sannyas, he had become Narayan. You know, he was rejecting that misconception, and that's indicated here by the fact that he kept the brahmachari name Chaitanya as opposed to accepting one of those other names. Okay, reading on. Knowing him, Lord Chaitanya, to be the incarnation for Kali Yuga, Gargamuni, during the naming ceremony of Krishna, predicted his appearance. This boy, Krishna, has 3 other colors, white, red, yellow, as he appears in different ages. Now he has appeared in a transcendental blackish color. White, red, and yellow, these are the 3 bodily lusters that the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, assumes in the ages Satya, Treta, and Kali, respectively. So it means yellow corresponds with the Kali Yuga. So it says, now, in the Dwapara Yuga, the Lord has descended in a blackish hue. This is the essence of the statements of the Puranas and other Vedic literatures with reference to the context. In the Dwapara Yuga, the personality of Godhead appears in a blackish hue. He is dressed in yellow. He holds his weapons, and he is decorated with the Kaustubha jewel and the marks of Srivatsa. This is how his symptoms are described. And it goes on. The religious practice for the age of Kali is to broadcast the glories of the holy name. So that's all ages of Kali. That's, you know, right across the board. The religious practice for the age of Kali is to broadcast the glories of the holy name. Only for this purpose has the Lord in a yellow color descended as Lord Chaitanya. So, yes and no. There's a purpose behind his purpose. You see, his purpose was, as it says here, is only to broadcast the glories of the holy name. But as we just heard from those other verses by Rupa Goswami and other things, he had another purpose too, which was to give people this higher, spontaneous love for Krishna, these higher rasas, also to... Okay, we'll read the purport. In this age of Kali, the practical system of religion for everyone is the chanting of the name of Godhead. This was introduced in this age by Lord Chaitanya. Bhakti Yoga actually begins with the chanting of the holy name as confirmed by Madhvacharya in his commentary on Mundaka Upanishad. He quotes this verse from the Narayana Samhita. Dwapariyar Janayar Vishnu Pancharatrais tu Kevalai Kalo tu Namamatrena Pujate Bhagavan Hari. In the Dwapara Yuga, people should worship Lord Vishnu only by the regulative principles of the Narada Pancharatra and other such authorized books. In the age of Kali, however, people should simply chant the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Hare Krishna mantra is specifically mentioned in many Upanishads, such as the Kali Santarana Upanishad, where it is said, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti sodastakam nam Kali kalmasanasanam, natak paratado praya, sarva vedeshu drishyati. After searching through all the Vedic literature, one cannot find a method of religion more sublime for this age than the chanting of Hare Krishna. So, evidence supporting that point. Then it goes on, translation, the luster of his expansive body resembles molten gold. The deep sound of his voice conquers the thundering of newly assembled clouds. One who measures 4 cubits in height and breadth by his own hand is celebrated as a great personality. Such a person is called Nyagroda Parimandala. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who personifies all good qualities, has the body of a Nyagroda Parimandala. His arms are long enough to reach his knees. His eyes are just like lotus flowers. His nose is like a sesame flower, and his face is as beautiful as the moon. He is powerful, he is peaceful, self-controlled, and fully devoted to the transcendental service of Lord Sri Krishna. He is affectionate toward his devotees. He is gentle, and he is equally disposed towards all living beings. He is decorated with the sandalwood bangles and armlets, and anointed with the pulp of sandalwood. He especially wears these decorations to dance in Sri Krishna Sankirtan. Recording all these qualities of Lord Chaitanya, the sage Vaisampayana included his name in the Vishnu Sahasranam. The pastimes of Lord Chaitanya have 2 divisions, the early pastimes Adi Lila and the later pastimes Shesha Lila. He has 4 names in each of these 2 Leelas, and that brings us up to all the verses we had to cover. So on this point of how something really special is actually going on now with this advent of Lord Chaitanya, I found 2 interesting references in while I was listening to a lecture that Prabhupada gave here in Los Angeles, actually, and in 1969, in February of 1969. So I'm going to read these 2 excerpts and then just say very briefly something about them. So Prabhupada goes. These were famous lectures, actually. They were called the Yoga System. They were on the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Archita remembers them. He's shaking his head, yes. And those of us who took birth or joined in Brooklyn, Henry Street, probably heard them many, many times. They used to play them over the loudspeaker all the time, and they're very popular. So Prabhupada goes, any person who is not rendering service to the Supreme Lord, he is simply giving pain to the Supreme Lord. He's simply giving trouble. Therefore, he has to suffer. Just like any man who is not abiding by the laws of the state, he is simply giving pain to the government, and he's liable to become criminal. He may think, I'm a very good man, but because he's violating the laws of the state, he's simply torturing the government. This is simple. So anyone who is not serving, any living entity who is not serving God, he's painful. Because he is painful, therefore Krishna comes. He feels pain. That is sinful if we give pain. And then Prabhupada says, as soon as one thing is very painful, and he goes off on a tangent, he says, just like the government keeps all these painful citizens in the prison house, Prabhupada goes, collect together. And then quote, in quotation marks, he says, you live here, you all nonsense, you criminals, live here, don't disturb in the open state. So that's like an explanation, in Prabhupada's words, of how we got here. I mean, with the exception of those of you, if any Nityasiddha associates here of Lord Chaitanya, you're not included, and they very well might be. But just in general, this is the people who are here. They're nonsense. They're criminals. That's why we're here. Don't disturb in the open state. And Prabhupada goes on. He says, similarly, these criminals who have violated the laws of God, you have simply given pain to the Lord. They are put in the material world. And he says, same. He gave this example before. He says, if your finger is painful only, the doctor advises, oh, mister, your finger has to be now amputated. Otherwise, it will pollute the whole body. Okay? Yeah, so that's the idea. That's, people who are here in the material world now, with the exception of some Nityasiddha associates of Lord Chaitanya, who, I'm sure there are in this movement, are just in that category. They're, people who are in the souls in the spiritual world were causing a disturbance because they weren't willing to serve Krishna. They weren't willing to live in submission and compliance. They were defiant, rebellious, like that. So we get sent here, just like Prabhupada said again. You live here. You all nonsense, you criminals, live here. Don't disturb in the open state. Don't disturb in the spiritual world. We're going to send you to the material world. So that's who's here, okay? That's who's here in the material world, okay? Now, in that same lecture, just like 1 minute later, Prabhupada talks about the special gift of Lord Chaitanya. He says, if somebody instead of, they're talking about how there's a hierarchy of yogas. There's karma yoga, and then when karma yoga evolves, it becomes like jnana yoga, then that evolves into ashtanga yoga, and then the culmination of all the different yogas is bhakti yoga. So that's what Prabhupada's describing here at this point in the lecture. Then he goes, if somebody, instead of crossing the steps, if he is given a chance of the elevator, within a second he comes to the top. But if somebody says, why shall I take advantage of this elevator? I shall go step by step. Prabhupada goes, he can go. He says, but if you take this bhakti yoga, immediately you take the help of the elevator, and within a second you are on the 100th floor. This is the process, direct. You can go step by step, following all the yoga systems, but you can take directly. Now here it comes. Prabhupada says, Lord Chaitanya has recommended that in this age, because people are very short-living, and they're disturbed, and they're full of anxieties, that by His grace, by His causeless mercy, He is giving the lift immediately. Notice He's offering the elevator. So it's like if you go to the Empire State Building, which has like 102 stories, something. There's different elevators. Well, there's the stairs, You could take the stairs and try to get to the top by the stairs, and that would take you a long time, and you'd be really tired if you were able, in good enough shape, to make it to the top. And then they have other elevators. There's elevators that just stop at each floor, but then they do have an express elevator. And this, once you get in that express elevator, and zoop, you go right to the top. You're not walking up the stairs. You're not stopping at each floor. You're just being taken right to the top. It's real easy and real fast. So that's what Lord Chaitanya is offering. That's the special feature of Lord Chaitanya that it says here. By His grace, by His causeless mercy, He is giving you the lift immediately. Quote, come to Bhakti Yoga by chanting Hare Krishna, end quote. Immediately, you haven't got to wait. Immediately take. That is the special gift of Lord Chaitanya, which was recognized, of course, by Rupa Goswami. In that prayer, he says, Namo Mahavadana, he says, you are the most munificent incarnation because you are giving directly love of Krishna. To attain love of Krishna, one has to pass through so many steps and stages of the yoga system, and you are giving directly. Therefore, you are the most munificent. So actually, that is the position. So to wrap it up, what to speak of stages and steps of the yoga system. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Yesham tvantagatam papam gyananam punyakarmanam tedvanva noha nirmukta bhajanti mam drudavrataha. That only those who have acted piously and whose sinful activities are completely eradicated can engage in my devotional service with firm determination. In other words, usually you have to get to what Lord Chaitanya is giving freely, this topmost rasa of the devotional service, you got to be super qualified, generally speaking. And people in the Kali Yuga, what to speak of super qualified, they're disqualified. No qualification, basically. So basically what's happening is Lord Chaitanya is giving an opportunity. He's giving the opportunity for the lowest to go to become the highest. From the highest, he's giving the highest to the lowest. And he's giving the fastest way of getting it to the slowest. We heard from the Bhagavatam earlier, manda sumanda mata, means they're very slow. People in Kali Yuga, it's the dregs, you know, the smart living entities. They got out in the Satya Yuga, and if they didn't get out in the Satya Yuga, they got out in the Treta Yuga, and they got out in the Dwapara Yuga. Those of us who are still left here, we're like the bottom of the barrel, okay? So, but Lord Chaitanya is coming along, and he's giving the highest to the lowest, and the fastest to the slowest. So it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that's being offered here. And I think that's what we should come away with. That, wow, we got an incredible opportunity here. So we should really try to cash in on it. You know, try to cash in on this opportunity. I mean, imagine if they announced a sale at Best Buy. Everything was being sold for 1% of what the normal cost price. And would you just go there and buy, like, you know, some batteries? Or would you go you know, no. Go into your savings and, you know, buy a new Apple Mac computer and this and that. 1%, you know, it's like so that's what Lord Chaitanya is giving, something super valuable for a super easy way. It's just cheap. So we should really try to take full advantage of that. And which means, practically speaking, just get into devotional service. It's not everybody's going to do the same thing. It's not necessary. But whatever, you know, you feel, whatever inclination you have, whatever your propensity is, you know, that's probably, I just like to use that word, or just get into it in a super enthusiastic, full-on way, wholeheartedly. Dive in, you know, and you know, and go for it, and try to get this. What we're hearing is being offered here, the opportunity to be elevated to these higher mellows of devotional service, which normally aren't available. Aren't available to even elevated, you know, spiritually elevated people. What to speak of, like, ordinary people in the Kali Yuga. So, yes, dear Alita.
Announcement. We do have an always on mic, so even if we don't use this mic, they can still hear us on the always on mic.
Oh, okay.
Hare Krishna, thank you for a wonderful reading, Prabhu. Just one point that came when you were talking about Yuga Avataras. So, one name of Krishna is Tri Yuga. So apparently there is no Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga. So in that sense, it makes Lord Chaitanya even more special, especially like this Kali Yuga, because like we were reading, after Krishna left just before start of Kali Yuga, and then Lord Chaitanya comes in the same Kali Yuga. So it makes him even more special, because Krishna doesn't come in Kali Yuga. As per talking about Yuga Avataras. So this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I thought this was one point that came to me about Yuga Avataras.
Thank you, that's a good point. Bhakti Kir.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class. Similar to Lord Chaitanya appearing after Krishna, I was wondering, does Lord Chaitanya always appear after Krishna appears?
Lord Chaitanya always appears.
Does Lord Chaitanya always appear after Krishna appears?
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna appears once in the day of Lord Brahma, and then directly following that, Lord Chaitanya appears in the Kali Yuga, just like 4,500 years after that. That's what we were hearing from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So that's once in the day of Brahma. Question? Yeah, Mataji.
So what is the definition of Yuga Avatar? What is the difference between Lila Avatar and Yuga Avatar?
Well, there's 6 different types of avatars, and the Yuga Avatar introduces the process for self-realization for that age. So, you know, we were hearing how the process of self-realization for the age of Kali is the congregational chanting of the holy name. But Lord Chaitanya he came in the place of the Yuga Avatar. I don't know who that was, you know, who was supposed to be, who he bumped. But anyway, Lord Chaitanya did that, but he did it, and he offered something extra as well, which was the opportunity to experience these higher rasas which normally aren't, right? No other incarnation had ever offered those before. That's the statement by Rupa Goswami. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but now I have a question based on what you
Sure.
just said. So if Lord Chaitanya bumped some Yuga avatar and he came to give special mercy, does it mean that it's a special case when he comes? It doesn't come every Kali Yuga?
No, he doesn't come every Kali Yuga. To the best of my knowledge, Lord Chaitanya does not come every Kali Yuga. He comes once in the day of Lord Brahma, following. Yeah. Yeah. The exact chronology is given earlier on in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Oh yeah, it was in yesterday's verses, but Krishna comes, and then following Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya comes once in the day of Lord Brahma.
Does it mean that Krishna doesn't come every time and every time? Because what Kir Prabhu asked, if Lord Chaitanya comes after Krishna every time, and the answer was yes. And if Lord Chaitanya doesn't come every Kali Yuga, doesn't mean that Krishna doesn't appear to every...
Krishna doesn't come every Kali Yuga. No,
Okay.
Krishna comes once in the day of Lord Brahma.
Oh, the day of Lord
There's 1,000 cycles of the 4 yugas in one day of Lord Brahma, so Krishna comes only in one. There's a question? Yep.
So if you're saying Lord Chaitanya kind of replaces an incarnation during Kali Yuga,
Well, that's the purport said,
okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
But he always follows Krishna. Is Krishna doing the same thing?
Don't know.
Replacing,
Don't
because
know.
if he's bumping someone out of
I
that
don't know.
position,
I don't know. It's too technical.
that means Krishna would also be bumping
Too
someone.
technical a question for me. I don't want to try to answer that off the top of my head. But Krishna comes once in a day of Lord Brahma, and Lord Chaitanya comes right after it. So I'm just going to share an anecdote with everybody, and to wrap it up. Back in 1975, 76, Prabhupada wanted Tamal Krishna Maharaj to be the GBC for India. Whoever was the GBC gave it up or whatever, had some problem, they couldn't do anything. So Prabhupada wanted Tamal Krishna Maharaj to become the GBC. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj already by that time had established himself as a very intimate associate of Prabhupada, very surrendered personally, but he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to, Prabhupada asked him, requested him to stay here in India and be the GBC, and he didn't want to do it. He wanted to go to the West and preach. And Prabhupada actually got upset with him. Prabhupada got, don't try this at home, but I want to tell you this story, and you'll figure out the purport yourself. Prabhupada got upset with him and kind of said, what is your going to the West and preaching? I'm asking you to do this, stay. He didn't want to do it. And actually, so Prabhupada could see that, okay, he felt that he was being a bit stubborn. So Prabhupada let him, but he wasn't particularly happy about the whole thing, but he said, okay, go to the West and preach. And he, found somebody else. And so then but when he came back, that was, it was 1976 it was 75. And then when he came for the 1976 Mayapur festival, so he went to see Prabhupada. He hadn't seen him for a while because he was in the West preaching, and Prabhupada was spending some time in India. So Prabhupada said, so what is the result of your going to the West and preaching? Because he was still in that same mood of like, I told you to do this, you didn't want to. And someone says, okay. So he made a lot of devotees, and he had them all come in. 100 devotees came in to this little room where Prabhupada was staying on the second floor of the Lotus building. They all came in one by one, and they had a rose. This was all planned, of course, And they all took the rose, and they placed it on Prabhupada's desk, and then they paid their dandavats. And then they sat down. They all squeezed in there. And, Tamal Krishna was just kind of standing there, not without saying anything, just kind of beaming, and smiling. And Prabhupada looked over him and said, yes, okay. Yes, okay, that is the result of preaching, that's right. He was happy. So Prabhupada initially wasn't happy, he actually kind of did something. I mean, he didn't disobey the order of the spiritual master, but he didn't really surrender and cooperate because he had this other way he wanted to serve him, sincerely, and he got the sanction to do it, and he did it, and he made good on it, and he made all those devotees, and Prabhupada was pleased. So I'll let you figure out the purport to that anecdote, but that's a genuine, for real story. Okay, so thank you very much. Grantaraj Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.